is Anthony Richardson the perfect fit for the Indianapolis Colts? And are the Indianapolis Colts the perfect spot for Anthony Richardson to land in the draft? Well, let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle podcast presented by Fan Nation on SI.com. My name is Andrew Moore, and I'm joined here by Drake Wally, my fellow writer and co-host of the show. And Drake just got done with a move. Drake's in a new house. You see the background's a little bit different, has a homage to the person that should not be named up in the corner with a couple of awesome rookies. Drake, how you doing? How was the move? Glad you're all settled in, brother.
It was absolutely crazy. There's just so much stuff. Well, actually, I don't own a lot of things, but like I was like, it's gonna be cake. My parents even came and helped, and it was not. I'm still doing it. So it's been nice though. This will be much nicer and a little more custom, but no joke, 5 minutes before the show, all this went up. So it doesn't look too bad. So I'm excited to talk about Colts football again. I feel like I've been away for a month after that move.
Yeah, I bet. Moving sucks. Moving just sucks. It really does. I don't care who you are. It's awful. And I know the chat is excited to talk about it. Saul is good. He's excited to talk about Anthony Richardson. We've got Logan Schmidt on tonight, who's already got a super chat that we're going to get into that right in a second.
Thank you, good sir.
We've got Stats Matt here. It's not fair that you're not doing Will Levis tonight. No, we aren't doing Will Levis tonight. We'll be doing Will Levis on Thursday. Stats Matt always has to get one of those in. We got Chad here. We've got David here saying his favorite podcast is back on. Hey, we really appreciate you, David. Appreciate it. Logan, I'm going to get you your super chat here in a second. If anyone else has a super chat that they would like us to talk about, definitely put that in there. We'll be sure to get to your comment and talk about what you have to see or have to share with us. But if you haven't done so already, look at the ticker. Go ahead and like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook. Follow Horseshoe Huddle on Twitter at Colts on FN. Subscribe to Horseshoe Huddle on YouTube and hit that bell so you know when Drake and I are going live, whenever Destin and Shad are going live. Guys, we're 17 days away from the first round of the NFL draft. 17 days. And if you haven't done so already, guys, I don't know what you're doing, but the Indy Draft Guide is now available. It was released this morning. Zach, Destin, and I, a lot of hard work has gone into this Indy Draft Guide. Over 225 prospects. It's what we'll be using from now up until and after the draft on all these prospects. Definitely get your copy. The link is in the description, and we hope you enjoy. So it was a lot of fun, as always, working on this project. And before we dive in to Anthony Richardson, we got to get to Logan Schmidt, our buddy. We appreciate the super chat, man. Hey guys, Luck versus Levis, please. Sorry to interrupt the Anthony Richardson cast. Well, let's talk about it. We'll dive into it real quick. We got time. There was a debate on Twitter today of who was more athletic, Andrew Luck versus Will Levis. And I'd like to have the chat go on. We'll talk about Anthony Richardson here in a bit, but chat real quick. Who do you think was more athletic, Andrew Luck or Will Levis? Drake, what are your thoughts?
Well, I guess I'll be fair here. I mean, Andrew Luck may not have been the fastest at full burn. I think he was, if you're talking about speed in a full sprint, I think it'd probably be Will Levis. But if we're talking about pure, unadulterated, just athleticism, and I mean, this is a man who literally folded a defensive back in college when he picked up his own teammate's fumble. Dude looked like he was dead on the ground, and Andrew Luck is just hovering over the top of him looking for the ball like he didn't even feel anything. I mean, Andrew Luck to me is, if you put everything together, he is more athletic, but you also don't know yet because Will Levis hasn't even stepped on an NFL field. We're going to have to see what his athleticism brings to an NFL field. Right now, his comparison is coming from his days in Kentucky. So, I don't think it's fair, but also I got to go with Andrew Luck. He was a freak.
Andrew Luck was a freak. There's not a debate here. It was Andrew Luck, and that's no disrespect to Will Levis.
Oh, no.
But Andrew Luck was a generational prospect. I mean, there hasn't been a quarterback even above Andrew Luck since Andrew Luck. And I'm talking about Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence. Andrew Luck was still a better prospect than both of those guys. You look at even just their college games. Andrew Luck was a quicker runner. He was a guy that put his body on the line. Not saying Levis didn't, but you saw the results there with Andrew Luck. Then you go to their testing. I know Will Levis didn't do like run the 40-yard dash or do anything like that, but you look and Andrew Luck was bigger than Will Levis. He was more explosive. If you look at the vertical jump and the broad jump, those are, while you don't really need to have jumping for a quarterback, those are tests of explosion. Andrew Luck was better than Will Levis in both of those. Andrew Luck ran a 4.6 40. A lot of people are saying that Will Levis, from people I trust and scouts on the ground, and that have been around the Kentucky program, have said that Will Levis was projected to run in the 4.7s. So Andrew Luck was the athlete, the better athlete, and it's still just an absolute shame that we're not talking about the Colts getting ready for another season with Andrew Luck at the helm, and that will always be one of the biggest what ifs in NFL history. So Logan, appreciate that one, though. That's at least my thoughts. That's Drake's thoughts on the issue. Was fun. Maybe someday we'll get into a Will Levis. We'll eventually debate who is the better Colts quarterback, Andrew Luck or Will Levis, Andrew Luck or Anthony Richardson, Andrew Luck, C.J. Stroud, Andrew Luck, Bryce Young, whoever the Colts take. That might be a conversation years down the road that could be a fun one. But let's not talk about Andrew Luck. Let's leave that man retired. It's time, guys. I know you guys have been wanting to talk about this guy, and I know you guys want to talk about the guy we're going to focus in on Thursday with Will Levis. But today it's Anthony Richardson, quarterback out of Florida. Just a massive, massive human being. The dude stands at 6'4", 244 pounds, 21 years old, will be 21 years old. Or I think, no, he is 21 years old. Correct. May 22nd of 2001 was his birthday. He's an early entrant into the NFL draft, was a former 4-star recruit that went to Florida over several other Power 5 offers, and he attended high school in Gainesville, redshirted his first year, and didn't really play too much until this past year. And that's, again, we'll kind of get to all that. This was his only full season as a starter there in Gainesville, and he threw for 2,549 yards, 17 touchdowns, 9 interceptions with a 53.8 completion percentage. He also tallied up 654 yards rushing and 9 touchdowns on the ground for the Florida Gators. Real quick, Drake, let's just kind of give me an overview of your thoughts on Anthony Richardson, and chat, you guys can do the same as well. What are your thoughts on Anthony Richardson before we really dive into the pros and cons here?
Oh man, every time I hear Anthony Richardson's name, the first thing that pops up is raw. Incredibly inexperienced. Does not have the games. I mean, this kind of goes back to experience, but it's a little different. He doesn't have the games that the other quarterbacks have, but also other things that come to mind. The most explosive I've ever seen. The guy is absolutely ridiculous. I'm talking about coming out of college. There's never been a more pure athlete, and he's at quarterback, which is the most important position. And there are several teams that could absolutely use his legs. And I also have one more thing: hard worker. The guy has absolutely made himself who he is. He's willing to put in all the time. He's willing to get himself better. And you just can't imagine AR without, a guy. I can't stop thinking about him with Shane Steichen. I can't stop thinking about those pairings. So I also think that he's going to be able to be molded as well. So that's another term that comes to mind, is moldable, I guess, teachable.
Right. Stats Matt always coming in here with clutch. He was actually born in 2002.
Jeez.
So Anthony Richardson isn't even 21 years old yet. He will be 21 at the end of May, before he even gets into his to his first training camp. He will just be turning 21. But let's really dive into that, Drake. The pros of Anthony Richardson, and of course the first thing that stands out, as Nathan said, did you get a haircut? I did just shave my head today. day again, but I've had my shaved head for quite some time, Nathan. It's you just can't tell with the hat. Sometimes I still wear that, rock that hat, but yeah, the pros of Anthony Richardson, again, it's insane athlete. We're talking about an athlete at the quarterback position that we've never seen before. When you're talking about size, speed, explosiveness, and I know we talk about like Cam Newton. A lot of times, Cam Newton gets brought up as a comparison to Anthony Richardson, but Anthony Richardson ran a faster 40. He has more explosion as far as the jumping metrics are concerned. He, by all means, is more agile than what Cam Newton was. A bigger athlete. Wait, I think Cam might have been 6'5", so Cam might have been just a tad bigger. I'm not 100% certain on that. But regardless, Anthony Richardson's athleticism just completely jumps off the charts. And I saw a comment here from Steve. He said, read an article from Daniel Kelly. He doesn't like Richardson or Levis, says Richardson's athleticism doesn't match his film. I disagree. After I've watched 5 games of Anthony Richardson on tape, and you can really see that athleticism, though. I mean, are you seeing another quarterback that size and the college game in the SEC, nonetheless, taken off for runs of 40, 50 yards, or being able to shrug defenders off of them like the little rag dolls and still deliver a strike down the field? That's a lot of what I see in Anthony Richardson's game.
Well, and the thing is, one of the most intriguing aspects that makes him, that's basically getting other teams to want to trade up potentially to get him, is that absolutely ridiculous frame. Like, I think that Stats Matt said, he's built like a defensive end, and he legitimately is. He's absolutely freakishly large, and for him to be able to go out and pump a dang near 4-second 40, or excuse me, a 4.4 40, while being able to throw the ball deep as well as he does. So there's a couple things that he doesn't really need to hone as much as I think those precision passes. Like, there's some that you just know he's going to wind up that arm like he does, and he's going to put one in the dirt, but then he's going to hit one where you're like, how the heck did he actually hit that throw? There's going to be some that might just sail over or might hit the dirt, but with that kind of frame and that kind of rawness, there's so many coaches that are just saying to themselves, I can be the guy that's going to be able to get him to that superstar level.
Right. And then when you talk about you talk about what Chris Ballard might want, or what the Colts are looking for, you hear it all the time. Chris Ballard saying we bet on high end traits. They're not looking. I mean, they're not looking for guys that are just the safe pick. They want guys that can be an absolute alien. And they really, as Stats Matt says, did Chris Ballard was he felt, as Logan Schmidt said. Sorry, Logan says did Chris Ballard feel Anthony Richardson? That could very well be something that is said after the draft if the Colts do take this guy. You want a guy with the high end athletic ability, because a lot of times that athletic ability can set a person's floor as far as what type of football player they are. And when you have a coaching staff that you brought in specifically to help develop the quarterback position, you might want to give him the guy with the best traits out of anybody in this class, and really try to use those traits and use those strengths to your advantage. And with a guy like Anthony Richardson, it's hard to find a more traitsy quarterback than that. I mean, we talked about the athleticism, but we also need to talk about his arm strength, how he absolutely can throw the ball out of the building. There's not a single throw that this kid cannot make. I mean, you even saw it at his pro day. So I think when you're talking about one area where you can compare Anthony Richardson and Will Levis, I mean, they both have incredible arms. So it's kind of hard to distinguish the two there. But you also can't deny just the pure arm talent that Anthony Richardson does have.
Well, and look, the Colts, the most mobile guy they've had is Andrew Luck. Okay, and I think that you were never, as a defense, saying, okay, we got to watch to see, because this guy's going to damage us all game with his legs. All right, that wasn't Andrew Luck's forte. Is he going to potentially pick up those 7 or 8 yards, or if you're in the red zone, could he bust a run loose? Of course, but Anthony Richardson is giving the Colts, something that none of these other guys are, and that is a complete that's like the freakish athletic, moniker all over the place. So they've got the legs, they've got the threat to run, and even though that's more like, likely to get somebody hurt being that sort of style, I guess, it also opens up a defense for to attack them. And they have to sit and wait for a quarterback to run and see if he's going to go or not. Well, that puts an entirely different, fold in your game plan. And then you got Jonathan Taylor, then you've got ability to throw the ball deep. It's what the Colts have needed, and you have those traits on the highest end potentially. It's going to be hard for Ballard not to say absolutely with all those pros.
Right. And I see this comment here by Basil. Let me see, because I was just going back a little bit, saying that you watched him go 0 for 11 in the Florida State game and you're still excited. And I am. And here's why. Because when you turn on the tape, again, you see that 0 for 11. Yeah, that's bad. Were some of those on Richardson? Absolutely. But when I charted the game, over half of those, that stretch where he was 0 for 11, over half of those were on his receivers. I mean, your receivers have to make a play, and the play calling by Florida also was nothing to be excited about. I mean, Anthony Richardson on a lot of those plays put the ball in the right situations. He made the correct read, made an accurate throw, and a lot of times either the receiver dropped it or the receiver just didn't make a play on the ball that an NFL wide receiver would do. So again, a lot of the things going against Anthony Richardson are people looking at stats. And when you look at stats, a lot of times when you're trying to evaluate college quarterbacks, it's going to get you to make really bad mistakes. I mean, and I can tell you this, NFL evaluators don't give a damn about stats. Yes, they see the 53% completion percentage by Anthony Richardson, and they want to do some work to see why it was so low. And I'm not saying that Anthony Richardson is the perfect prospect either, but if you're just going to automatically mark a guy off because he had 53% completion percentage and you don't do your homework and you don't watch the film to see why that happened, you can miss out. And I can tell you that NFL evaluators, when they're looking at Anthony Richardson, they really don't care about the completion percentage. That's something that a lot of fans see because it's something fans can really take quickly. But when you watch the film, you really see why that happened. And I mean, Florida was one of the teams with the most drops in the nation a season ago. Anthony Richardson can't catch the ball. Could he, at some of those situations, could he maybe take some mustard off it? Maybe not throw a missile on a 2 to 3 yard route? Absolutely. But that's not all the drops. Most of the drops are down the field by his receivers who, in an NFL situation, those receivers are going to make that play 9 times out of 10.
Well, and I'm really glad that you brought that up because, yes, stats can absolutely be misleading. And when you look at 53%, that makes you cringe a little bit. It just does. But if you write off a guy for being 53%, for being in the sub 50s, above 55, whatever, in the 50% completion percentage range at all, you'd be writing off a lot of players coming out of college. You would also be writing off potentially a couple rookies in the NFL. So it's you kind of got to dive deeper into that. And when you factor in that all those drops occurred, and when the play calls weren't very good, and when the coaching situation was changing for such a young kid around him, I mean that's a lot to take on. That's a lot of weight you have to drag. And a lot of times Anthony Richardson, at the end of the day, he had to play Superman ball, and for a guy that's so young and raw, it just doesn't fit well. He shouldn't have to play Superman ball when he's got such little experience and such a small palette, to look after.
Yeah, absolutely. And Stats Matt makes a great point here. Tim Tebow's stats were great, and how'd that go? Again, you can't really look. There's been so many quarterbacks that have had great stats in college. I mean, you look at Marcus Mariota, look at Jameis Winston. How have those guys really done in the NFL? Zach Wilson had fantastic stats at BYU. How's that turned out in the NFL? So it's something that you have to take some stock into it. You'd be pretty stupid not to. But when there's an outlier or something that sticks out, you really, and this is why these NFL evaluators always do their homework and go through countless hours and hours of film. You want to see why it was like that. And I'm not saying that this was all None of it was on Anthony Richardson. He made a lot of throws that you scratch your head like, man, he really needs to get that fixed.
Oh, wide open.
Right, exactly. There's some wide open throws that he just misses. And he's got to get that cleaned up if he wants to be successful at the next level. But you can't just look at that 53% completion percentage and say, oh, he's terrible, because that's just not the case. Anthony Richardson is a good prospect, and there's a reason that teams could see that he can are considering him a top of the first round talent because of what they see. I want to address one more thing about his strengths is just the because we talked about his athletic ability. We talked about his very, very strong arm, but I also want to talk about his movement in the pocket. And this will kind of translate to also his rushing ability. Anthony Richardson, when you turn on the film, he's definitely not a statue in that pocket. He has that innate ability when the pressure is closing in on him, he's able to move just those little slight subtle movements in the pocket. I'm not saying he's Patrick Mahomes magician-esque, but he can evade a ton of sacks, and that is going to be huge for this Colts team, where the Colts had zero of that last year. Guy got through the line, you could pretty much call the play dead right there. It's going to be a sack. With Anthony Richardson, the play is not dead until he's down on the ground.
Well, and see, something that Colts fans didn't get to see, obviously, with Foles and Ryan, is what you just mentioned, because it was one guy through and there's just a stiff body standing right there for the taking. But even Sam Ehlinger, who had the ability to get out of the pocket, he wouldn't stay in the pocket and be elusive and make things miss and make defenders miss and stay in that pocket. He would just dart out of it. He would just go. He wanted out of the pocket. And you kind of got that scrambling, hoping for something downfield and extending a play type of play. But I got to tell you, I agree, because there's multiple clips where he is just doing just the smallest movements, making defenders miss, or if one of his linemen's coming flying by him, getting shoved by a defensive end or tackle, he's moving away from that failed block. I mean, I don't think he's as far off as people think. Mentally, I think that he reads tape well. I think that he's got a great pocket presence, and I think he knows when to run. I also think that he's probably not as far off as some might think from getting better at accuracy. I think he just needs the right coach.
Yeah, he really isn't. I mean, again, I keep mentioning this because with Anthony Richardson, the film is so important to really get a full grasp of the kind of player he is. And you hear Chris Ballard say it all the time, that the film tells us enough about the prospects. I mean, yes, they want to do their due diligence and they will learn something from these meetings, but they don't need to see how he throws at a pro day or how he throws at the combine. They want to focus in on the film when he's playing in an actual game. And you see that. You see Anthony Richardson being able to handle the protection calls at the line of scrimmage. I've seen him being able to manipulate the safety with his eyes, staring down the safety in the middle of the field before he's able to go to his left or to his right to the receiver that he wants to go to. I've seen him been able to call different, not only work protections at the line of scrimmage, but be able to get wide receivers in the right place. Yes, he is still raw. Yes, he might not even be able to start from day one if he's not there, if he's not at the point that the Colts or whoever takes him is familiar with his processing ability. But you can already see on film that he is doing some of the stuff that he will be asked to do from a processing standpoint at the NFL level. And when you watch the games as the season went along, you saw Anthony Richardson get better and better and better at that. And that could just be the case. He just needs live reps and he just needs time. Again, only 1 year starter at Florida, only started 13 games in his career, not even 21 years old yet. This kid is still just incredibly young and has a lot of untapped potential, in my opinion. But Drake, let's move it along to the cons of Anthony Richardson. What is the biggest con you think out there for Anthony Richardson, and something that he is definitely going to need to clean up at the next level in order to be successful?
I would definitely say just the mechanics. I mean, you look at his footwork too. It could use a lot of work. I think his mechanics could use a lot of work. He's got to get the ball out quicker. He's got that whipping windup thing going on where that's just too much. He's probably going to need to shorten that a little bit sometimes. Obviously, if he's throwing deep, you want to cork it. But he also needs to work kind of like Will Levis, actually. He got criticized at the same thing during his pro day from Daniel Jeremiah that he doesn't need to hit a receiver 100 miles an hour. That's 5 yards away. When he throws that ball, it is liable to break your freaking fingers. I mean, like he's going to throw that thing as hard as he can. Will Levis did the same thing. So it's like I think that he's going to have to realize not everything has to be a Superman ball. And he may, one last thing that I don't even know if it's been mentioned, but he may have to realize, hey, you don't need to do everything this time. Like you don't have to go above and beyond. You have to work in this. We want you to work about right here. You used to do this. I used to, handle all this kind of workload. We need you to work with this much right here. Stay in this little realm. He might need to be able to condense his responsibility because at Florida, he was doing literally everything like for the offense. So I think that those are just a couple of cons, but at the end of the day, it's just going to be experience. I think that's the biggest one, lack of experience.
Right. And obviously number one is accuracy. Number one, because there are times where you see Anthony Richardson trying to, like I mentioned earlier, trying to throw to a wide receiver that's wide open, and he just flat out messes up. And the reason for that is when, again, you look at the film, and I know I keep bringing this up, but with Anthony Richardson and with really all these quarterbacks, the the film is just so important. And when you watch that film of Anthony Richardson, a lot of times when he misses, it's because his mechanics aren't lined up. His feet aren't lined up with where his upper body is pointing to. He's trying to use his arm too much. He's not using the hips and his body to kind of use it to throw the football. He's more trying to aim a throw rather than just throw it naturally, and all of those things. Here's the biggest thing about this: it is a major con, but all of those things are correctable. And again, this is again why you have to take this into consideration with Anthony Richardson, because he is only 20 years old. He wasn't working with the best coaching staff down there in Florida. And what did the new head coach of the Indianapolis Colts just say not even 2 months ago about accuracy? Shane Steichen at the NFL Combine said he believed accuracy can be taught. It's something that once you get that repetition, you're able to get those mechanics down, and then you just drill until it does become second nature. We've seen it with guys like Josh Allen, who is my comp for Anthony Richardson. I see the Cam Newton comparisons, but to me, my comp is Josh Allen. Just the way he throws the football, the way that he is able, where he didn't have the best college statistics, but you could see him consistently try getting better throughout his college career. It's the same thing with Anthony Richardson. A lot of times he's just got to line up his base, line up that footwork. And when Drake and I were at the NFL scouting combine together, I mean, you remember I was pointing out his footwork, and when he had that base where he wasn't clicking his heels together and he had that strong base, Anthony Richardson's his balls that he was throwing was just as on point as CJ Stroud. But then when the footwork wasn't lined up and it was a little tiptoey, a little heel clicky, that's when you saw the overthrows are not the greatest ball placement. It's going to be all about Anthony Richardson really honing in on his mechanics. And once he does, then I think you will see him become a much more accurate passer in the NFL.
Well, and I agree because some of the things I've heard, which I agree with, were that his upper body is has got the ball like ready to uncork, but his lower body is kind of not doing. It's not like in sync with
Exactly.
his like upper body. So his
Exactly.
feet are doing one thing, and his arm or his torso is doing something completely different. If those aren't in sync when you make a throw, oh man, I mean that thing's going to look like a lame duck. So those are the kind of things he's just going to have to improve. And again, it's really tempting if you do take him, whoever takes him. It's going to be so tempting not to throw him out there day one because you're like, well, the guy needs reps, but he also needs to learn. So it's like you don't want to kill his confidence though and send him out there first game of his career, 5 interceptions, 10 for 30. It looks just disgusting, but at the same time, it's going to take a lot of reps. But like you said, everything that he struggles with, it can be corrected with the right minded coach, right staff, and I think just complete and utter repetition all week long.
Right. And as stats Matt said, inexperience is another con. Just because he doesn't have the reps, he doesn't
Huge.
have the playing experience. And again, it goes back to when you watch him as the season went on at Florida. Yes, he had a great first game against Utah where he looked like an absolute alien, but then he came down to earth a little bit. However, as the season did go along, you saw more consistent play more often from Anthony Richardson. He did have his bad games. He did have some bad games to end the year, but he also had some really good games. And you saw those stretches where he looked like you can see the potential is there. The talent is there. It's all about refining it. It's all about making sure you can get the consistency out of him. As Saul says, Shane Steichen, I can fix him. Anthony Richardson, like he fixed Jalen Hurts. And that's kind of what we're talking about. Are the Colts the best fit for Anthony Richardson in order for him to really reach his potential? And because of just Shane Steichen's experience with Jalen Hurts, with Justin Herbert, with Phillip Rivers, he's been with so many different types of quarterbacks, being able to tailor the system to that quarterback in order for them to succeed. And honestly, I mean, looking at the other teams at the top, I mean, you could talk about Carolina with Frank Reich as being another possibility, but I really don't think that they're going to go Anthony Richardson. It could shock the world and take him number one overall. But Drake, I guess this answers the big question of the second big question of the show. Are the Colts the best fit for Anthony Richardson in order for him to reach his potential?
Oh man, the best. So we're not saying are the Colts going to take him. We're asking if it's the best fit.
Best fit. That'll be our next question. That'll be the big one. Will Anthony Richardson be a Colt?
Oh,
but
man.
Are the Colts the best team for Anthony Richardson to reach his full potential?
So if we're putting in we'll just put in the big three that have been like floated around potentially getting him. So Carolina, Indianapolis, and I think Seattle has even been like thrown out there, which he would sit behind Geno, which actually makes perfect sense. I do think if we're talking about fitting Anthony Richardson's strengths, that athleticism, that ground game, who better than Jonathan freaking Taylor? Who better than a running back committee like Deion Jackson, Zach Moss, and the aforementioned JT? Who better than a coach who has coached to prominence, by the way, a pocket passer who stood like a statue, an all-around athlete like Justin Herbert, who is a volume passer, and a freak athlete like Jalen Hurts? Who better than guys that are downfield threats like Alec Pierce? Who better than a guy that's 6'7" like Jelani Woods? I just think, and they're all young. They're all young. Michael Pittman Jr. is even young. Oh, Isaiah McKenzie. I think he's the oldest guy on the core. I think he is literally the oldest receiver on the core. Maybe I'm wrong. But
you're right.
27, by the way. He's 27. That's it.
Yeah. So happy birthday to Isaiah McKenzie, by the way.
Yeah. Ridiculous potential with that roster. They have been missing a consistent, explosive quarterback. I just think that as much as Steichen has talked about explosive plays, the downfield threats the Colts have, the running game that they've got, and an O-line that they have to come out angry and they have to play better. That to me is that's the best fit for Anthony Richardson.
All right, Drake. I'll let you answer this one first too before I give my spiel. Will Anthony Richardson be a Colt in 17 days?
Yes.
And by the way, in chat, let us know too. Do you think Anthony Richardson will be a Colt in 17 days? Drake, go ahead.
I think that if we're talking about all four quarterbacks after the trade, I mean, originally me and Andrew, we both were like, it's CJ Stroud to the Colts. They are going to do everything they can to get him. Well, everything's changed now. And the Raiders, they've got Jimmy G. There's other factors that have played out that quarterbacks aren't needed for a couple other teams. The Colts have lost competition now. So really, I think that they're going to move up to 3. They're going to figure out a way to trade, and they're going to take Anthony Richardson. Now, if somehow they stay at 4, that kind of increases the chances it could be Will Levis. I think it's Richardson, though, and Levis. But I do think if I had to predict, I think Ballard is sold, Steichen is sold, and, you bet your ass Jim Irsay is sold if both those guys are.
Yeah, I think I am, like I told you guys last week, I was about 60% on the Anthony Richardson train as far as thinking he would come to the Colts. I'm at about 70% now, and here's why. I do think Anthony Richardson will be a Colt. I think that he'll be the next franchise quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. There's been a lot of smoke about what various quarterbacks want to come to the Colts, or I'm sorry, what various quarterbacks and who the Colts prefer, I would say, in this draft class. But again, I'm going to go back to these little nuggets that the team has left to the media, and some other things that I know. Number one, I mean, you talk about Chris Ballard, like I said earlier in the episode, high end traits. The guy with the best high end traits is Anthony Richardson. You talk about Shane Steichen, who has helped guys like Jalen Hurts, who has helped guys like Justin Herbert. Because remember, when Justin Herbert came out and was taken at number 6, there were questions about him. Could he be accurate with the football? Or was he just this big, tall kid with a rocket arm? And Shane Steichen helped Justin Herbert put that to bed very, very quickly.
Yeah, quick.
Very, very quickly. And now Justin Herbert is a potentially top 5 quarterback in the NFL. So you got the right coach. You have a GM that bets on these traits. You've got a kid that has shown growth throughout the year. And then when we talk about kind of what the Colts have done this offseason, the Colts have been looking into Anthony Richardson for some time now. The Colts were looking into him last year. They've sent a lot of personnel and a lot of scouts to his games to really do their homework on Anthony Richardson, to watch him live, to learn everything about this kid. Morocco Brown, the Colts' third in command, the chief personnel executive, was at his pro day. There's a reason for that. Morocco Brown goes to the most important pro days. That's not something that Ballard or Dodds, the assistant GM, does. It's Morocco Brown. And we have been hearing also in the media about how the Colts really like Will Levis. They're fine taking Will Levis. But he's the only quarterback that this supposed leak has come out about. You guys know the Colts. Ever since Ballard got there, they are very, very, very tight-lipped when it comes to when it comes to information they allow out. Why now all of a sudden, when they are making their most important pick since Andrew Luck, why all of a sudden is it coming out that we're starting to get leaks from the Colts organization? But then we always find out little tiny things, not from the organization or not from the national media, but from random pictures where you see that the Colts are in Gainesville. The Colts are here talking to Anthony Richardson. Everything just seems very, very low key. It's because their interest in Anthony Richardson for the Indianapolis Colts is sky high. The Colts want everyone to think they're okay with Will Levis, but really it's Anthony Richardson. That is the target. So I fully expect Anthony Richardson to be a Colt on April 17th, unless something crazy happens where CJ Stroud or Bryce Young fall. Then it could be a whole different conversation. Oh, yeah. But the Colts are very high on Anthony Richardson. And they've been doing a lot of homework on him. They're very comfortable with him. These top 30 visits will a lot of times put them over the top. The biggest thing they want to find out is Anthony Richardson have that obsession with football that Shane Steichen talks so much about? And as long as they're comfortable with that, I think Anthony Richardson will be the pick on April 27th. Now, will he start right away? That's yet to be seen. That will be determined through OTAs, through the summer, through training camp. If Anthony Richardson is there mentally, as far as being able to handle the playbook, being able to process and handle it all mentally, I think they throw him out there to get that experience right away. But if he's not, they're not going to put him into the fire until he is mentally ready. Once he is, they're going to take off the reins and let him go and see what happens. But if I was putting money on it, which we all know we don't bet on the Colts here, bad juju. If I was putting money on it, Anthony Richardson would be my bet for the next quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts.
Well, and I think that with everything that's happened and the way that the coaching staff has been assembled and everything like that, I mean, I'm not saying that they assembled the staff for Anthony Richardson, but you look at Cam Turner, who worked with Kyler Murray and Cam Newton, both mobile guys that needed to learn how to be more of a thrower in the NFL and how to kind of connect all those skills. Then you've got a guy like Jim Bob Cooter, who, and I'll preach all three of these guys all day, is that he helped Trevor Lawrence kind of understand, his strengths and how to use them at the best and when to use them. And then you've got Shane Steichen. And I think that this is a team that is built perfectly for a raw quarterback. I really do think that that's the case. Did you know that the oldest lineman is Ryan Kelly, and he's 29? He's not even 30 yet. So it's not an old O-line. You've heard, regression, Kelly, Nelson, and some of those things are true. I also think that last year you can't throw it away, but good God, it was just so bad. It's hard to imagine anybody doing really great. So I think that this is a team that's built for a raw quarterback, and I think that they could succeed with Anthony Richardson and maybe even have him start day one. It'd just be completely upon if he's ready or not, like you said.
Right. And Colts fans, you also need to be patient with whatever quarterback the Colts draft, because there is no Peyton Manning or Andrew Luck. Just because the Colts draft a rookie quarterback does not mean that the Colts are going to go 11-5. That was the genius and the beauty of Andrew Luck playing football. We need to really pull back our expectations. What we want to see out of this rookie quarterback is through the year, we want to see progression. We want to see him getting better each and every week. And that might be from really bad to just mediocre. But again, we just want to see progression. You have to be patient with these rookie quarterbacks when they're not generational prospects, something that the Colts really haven't been able to experience since before Peyton Manning. So, and we have Dabney here saying Arizona said that 6 people are asking about their pick. I think it will be Levis, as he will be the only one available. You got to remember, as Mr. Colt says right here, lying season, people. There's a reason. There is a reason the Arizona Cardinals are leaking that out to Shefty. It's because they want the Colts to trade up with them, and they want the Colts to give up more capital in order to secure that. So just be ready for that. You're going to hear a lot of stuff out there that's not true. And you got to think which side it could be coming from, because a lot of teams, including the Indianapolis Colts, use the media in order to try to manipulate things. So we'll have to see. And as Wyatt Law says, none of those 6 teams can match what the Colts could offer. If Arizona traded with Indy, they'd still get their guy and add a pick or two. No other team compares. So very, very true, Wyatt Law. Very, very true. So
some sage stuff that he just laid down.
Wow. Wyatt Law's always the guy with a sense of reason here, man. Just a wise man. Let's move it along to the latest Colts news. There's really one other thing that we want to talk about today as we wrap up the Anthony Richardson talk. And it's that the Colts started their off-season program today. The Colts were back in the building. It's voluntary at this point, but most of the players were there. And really these first 2 weeks, a lot of meetings, a lot of install, really just focusing on classroom work. They do have some workouts together in the weight room, nothing on the field. But it's a lot of just getting the system down. So the Gus Bradley and the defense already have a leg up because it's the same thing from last year. But with this new offensive staff, it might not necessarily be a completely new playbook because Steichen comes from Nick Sirianni, Frank Reich tree. There'll definitely be there'll be some differences in there. But for these first 2 weeks, it's all about that install process and getting everybody back in the building.
Well, and it also shows them who's willing to come, this early. And I think it's really important for guys like Isaiah McKenzie, guys like, if he did show up, Samson Ebukam, guys that weren't previously Colts. This is huge for them, but even more so on the offense, kind of like you said, because you've got a head coach that's running the offense. You've got a new OC. You've got a new quarterbacks coach. You've got a new running backs coach. You've got a new offensive line coach, but Reggie stayed as the wide receivers coach, but then you've got a new tight end coach. So you've got so many new things happening on offense. So I think that obviously you want to show up, but like you said, the defense is kind of like, all right, we know who this guy is. We know Gus, and even Samson Ebukam could be like, well, I know I watched him last year, whatever. For the offense, I think it's huge that they have to get rolling a little bit quicker because it's all so new.
Right. Patrick asks, do you think the coaching staff will be fully ready to go since they came together so late? I think so.
Yep.
They've had enough time to really focus in and get things ready. I read an article today from Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated. He had spoke with Shane Steichen, and Steichen kind of detailed that since this staff has been put together, the first half of their days has been dedicated to install, making sure they get the systems down, learning the players that they have on the team. Second half of the day has been focused in on the draft. So I think they're fully prepared. This staff has been in the building now for close to 2 months, so that they're fully prepared on what exactly they need to do and what needs to be done moving forward. Mr. Colt asked, Drake, did you sell your jerseys? No, Drake did not sell his jerseys. He's just in the midst of a move. He hasn't gotten all the jerseys up yet, but I'm sure they'll be up soon.
Yes, and one that I really want to add badly right over the top is, and I'm going to try to find it somewhere, but I got to get Isaiah McKenzie up there, man. I mean, like it's but no, I did not sell all my jerseys. They're actually right here in this closet. It's just, I was moving so much that, no joke, I was telling everybody 5 minutes before the show started, I was like, done. So
right.
There will be more. Don't worry.
Logan says you need to get some signed jerseys and some frames up there. That might be the next move, Drake.
Yeah, I've got a very strategic plan. It's just it's one of those long lists. It's like this long of what I could possibly do with this Colts game. So
right.
Don't worry. Changes are coming though.
Right. Awesome. And that's our show for tonight, guys. Really appreciate everybody tuning in. The chat was lively, as we knew it would be, talking about Anthony Richardson. Shout out to Logan Schmidt for the super chat to get us off on the right foot. We really appreciate you, buddy. If you haven't done so, please go follow Logan on Twitter. He is an absolute blast on the Twitter machine. So definitely give him a follow. Also, shout out to Dabney, Patrick, Wyatt Law, David, Sky, Chris Kaiser, the real Mr. Colt, Stats Matt, Steve, Scott, Saul. I know I'm missing a lot of people because the chat was so active tonight, but Rich Wheeler, I see you in the chat here. But thank you guys all so much. Chad Holderfield as well. You guys make this all so much fun. And if you haven't done so already, please go ahead and follow all the things that are running on the ticker. Go ahead and like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook. Go ahead and follow at Colts on FN on Twitter. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and hit that bell so you know whenever we're going live, because more Colts content is going to be pumped out all month long heading up to the draft. And of course, we've got some things coming up on horseshoehuddle.com as well. Drake, what can the people find on the site that you've been working on?
Well, so since I had to move, I haven't wrote anything new, but I am going to write something tonight that will release soon. That is which Colts offensive player would benefit the most from each one of the big four quarterbacks if they're taken.
That's going to be a fun piece. I'm really looking forward to that, as we're just getting love from everybody here in the chat.
So awesome.
And yes, Patrick, the draft guide will be fixed. We did have Richardson as a low fit on the draft guide. That was just a mix up by our publisher. We apologize about that. But in a re-release here in a couple days, believe me, since I wrote the Anthony Richardson portion of the draft guide, that's getting fixed to a high. That for sure. Definitely getting fixed to a high. I know, Patrick. I know. Wasn't me. Wasn't Zach. Wasn't Destin. Can't put the blame on us, but it will get fixed. Believe me. And hey, perfect time to kind of talk about it. If you haven't done so, go get that Indy draft guide. Links in the description. Only $9.99, and it's something that you're going to get way more than $10 out of in this draft cycle. If you want to go check out my latest mock draft, dropped on Friday on the site. If you want to go check that out, it's going to be it was a lot of fun. Maybe a surprise here or there, but let me know what you guys think. And Wednesday morning, I'm going to have a piece detailing Anthony Richardson versus Will Levis and the different parts of their game side by side. And you might think, oh, it's just going to be a bashing Levis piece. Absolutely not. Levis has a lot of good things to his game.
Oh, yeah.
So definitely check that out. Go follow Drake at DWalster Drake. You can follow me at Andrew Moore NFL, and we will be back Thursday night to talk all about the Kentucky quarterback, Will Levis, diving into the pros, cons of his game, and if we think he might be an Indianapolis Colt once this thing's all said and done. So make sure you tune into that. But until then, Colts Nation, have a good one.